Welcome back to The Deep Dive, your shortcut to being well-informed. Today we're really going deep on some pretty significant global events, stuff that's genuinely impacting everyone, from your local coffee shop right up to international trade desks.
Absolutely. It's quite an unexpected turn in global economics, isn't it?
It really is. And we've got a stack of sources here to help us unpack all the surprising twists and turns. But before we jump into that economic whirlwind, I wanted to quickly mention something for anyone looking to maybe deepen their understanding of history, get some context.
Oh, yeah.
Our sources pointed us towards Hui Wang's A History of China series, specifically the newly updated volume on the Northern Song dynasty.
Oh, Wang Hui. Yes. Excellent work. Very readable.
Exactly. It's described as compelling, accessible, makes complex history actually engaging, and you can find it easily, ebook, paperback, both on Amazon.
Good recommendation. Context is always key, especially with what we're about to discuss.
Right. So let's pivot. The heart of today's deep dive. The rapid and, frankly, pretty astonishing escalation of what we're calling Tariff War 2.0.
Yeah, astonishing is a good word for it. This isn't just a small ripple.
No, it feels like a wave, and it's crashing much faster, much more intensely than that first round we saw earlier this year.
That's exactly right. So our mission today really is to unpack the timeline, the blow-by-blow of these events, and maybe more importantly, examine the, unprecedented motives driving these new tariffs.
The why behind it all.
Precisely. Especially how the purpose of these tariffs seems to be fundamentally shifting. And then, of course, we need to consider the potential global fallout.
And how it all ties back to, the fragility of the markets.
Exactly. That fragile interconnectedness, which ultimately could impact your daily life, your wallet, in some very direct ways.
Okay, let's get into it then. So the initial salvo, this kicked off Monday, July 7th.
Just days ago, yeah.
The U.S. announces new tariffs targeting 14 countries. And the first one's hit. Surprisingly, Japan and South Korea. Two close allies.
Which immediately raised eyebrows, obviously.
Right. And these aren't small measures.
Yeah.
Our sources say they go into effect August 1st. And they apply to all products. Everything.
All products. That's a blanket approach we haven't really seen applied like this before, especially not to key allies.
Right.
Was there immediate reaction mentioned? Shock.
Mostly shock, it seems. But what's fascinating is how quickly it broadened from there. So those are the first two.
And the other 12?
The other 12 face tariffs ranging from 25% up to 40%. And a key detail here, these are independent of any existing industry-specific tariffs.
So it's an added layer on top of anything already in place.
Yeah, exactly. It's pure extra pressure. And they didn't stop there. The U.S. apparently made it really clear, try to bypass these by routing goods through a third country.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, you trigger even higher rates and retaliation. If any target nation dares to hit back with their own tariffs.
Let me guess. Double down.
Double the current tariffs, or just purely punitive ones. It was quite the opening statement. Aggressive doesn't quite cover it.
A serious warning shot, then.
But it didn't stop there. That was Monday. Come Wednesday, July 9th, just 2 days later, boom, 8 more countries targeted.
Wow, the pace is relentless.
It is. Tariffs, this time ranging from 20% to 50%. And the standout, Brazil. Hit with the maximum 50%.
Brazil at 50%. Now that is surprising. Why Brazil?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Especially when you dig into the why.
Because usually these things are about trade deficits, right? Protecting industries.
Exactly. But this is where it gets, as you said, interesting, or maybe counterintuitive. The U.S. actually runs a trade surplus with Brazil.
They sell more to Brazil than they buy from them.
Correct. Which makes a 50% tariff seem, odd.
Very odd. Has Brazil responded?
Oh, yeah. President Lula publicly criticized it. He pointed out, citing U.S. government's own data, apparently, that the U.S. has had a cumulative trade surplus with Brazil of $410 billion over the last 15 years.
So it's clearly not about balancing trade in the traditional sense.
Doesn't seem like it. Even former Fed Chair Eric Rosengren apparently called the move illogical, warned it would just, drive up coffee prices for American consumers.
Right, coffee being a major Brazilian export. So if it's not traditional trade logic, what is the reason?
This is where it gets really unprecedented, according to our sources. The explicit political motive cited by the U.S. government was that the high tariff on Brazil was partly due to Brazil's handling of former President Bolsonaro's trial.
Wait, what? Using tariffs because of how another country is handling an internal legal matter?
That seems to be the official explanation. Yeah, it's extraordinary.
That is extraordinary. Analysts must be going nuts over this.
They are. The sources indicate analysts see this as a really dangerous precedent. It seems to be the first time tariffs are being openly, explicitly used by the U.S. to interfere directly in another country's internal legal or political affairs.
Wow, that completely changes the game, doesn't it? It moves tariffs away from economics into pure geopolitics, or maybe even interference.
It signals a definite shift. Now, there's a defense being offered from some corners in the U.S.
Well, I bet there is.
Former Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross, for instance. He apparently noted that, similar strategies using economic pressure were used before. To pressure Mexico on border control, fentanyl.
Okay, I remember that.
And also to push EU nations on defense spending. So the argument is it's just using economic leverage for broader policy goals, something that's been done before.
Okay, so framing it as a continuation, just maybe more overt this time.
Perhaps. But the takeaway seems clear.
Which is?
Tariffs are now sort of a multi-purpose political tool. Punishment, diplomatic leverage. It's not just about trade balances anymore. It signals a pretty significant shift in foreign policy.
A flexible, powerful tool being used in new ways. And wasn't there also a warning about BRICS?
Yes, good point. The U.S. president also warned, apparently quite broadly, that any country supporting anti-U.S. BRICS policies, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa.
The bloc often seen as challenging the sort of Western-led order?
That's the one. Any country seen as supporting anti-U.S. policies from them could face a blanket 10% tariff. No exceptions mentioned.
Just a flat 10% for perceived alignment against U.S. interests? That's sweeping.
It is. But despite all this rapid-fire escalation, these really novel justifications, the U.S. market reaction, surprisingly calm.
Yeah, I noticed that. Why do you think that is?
Well, some on Wall Street, according to our sources, seem to believe this is all part of a tea game.
A tea game? What's that?
Think of it like a high-stakes threat. A big bluff, maybe, designed to be walked back later, perhaps after some concessions are made, like a game of economic chicken.
So they think the administration doesn't actually intend to follow through fully or for long. It's just posturing.
That seems to be one interpretation floating around, yeah.
But we should remember what happened last time, in April.
Exactly. What really ended the first round of the tariff war?
It wasn't the stock market taking a dip, was it? Or the dollar weakening? The administration didn't seem too bothered by those?
No. The crucial insight from our sources is it was a crisis brewing in the U.S. Treasury bond market.
The plumbing of the financial system. That's different.
Very different. Here's where it gets, maybe a bit concerning. The sources say that in just 1 week back then, 3 hedge funds collapsed.
3? Wow.
And that threatened a potential wave of forced selling up to $2 trillion in concentrated Treasury bond selling. A potential cascade failure.
$2 trillion. That's not a small number. That could freeze markets solid.
Absolutely. And then on April 11th, you had Jamie Dimon, CEO of J.P. Morgan, publicly warning that the Treasury market was getting dangerously close to a crisis. He even suggested the Fed might have to step in.
And when Jamie Dimon says the Fed might need to rescue the Treasury market, that's not just noise. That's a 5-alarm fire.
Right. It's not a small disturbance, as Dimon himself apparently put it. It's a major storm signal.
And that, according to the sources, is what forced the White House's hand, the looming bond market chaos.
That seems to be the consensus. The market essentially forced a pause in the tariff war. It showed its power.
The market blinked, and the policy followed.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
So that brings us to the critical question for you listening right now. Will this tariff war 2.0, really kicking off August 1st, will it spark a similar crisis in the U.S. debt market?
Or, given these new tactics, these political motives, are we looking at a different kind of fallout this time? Maybe something even more complex globally?
It's the big unknown.
Well, we've already seen some worrying signs, haven't we, about that interconnectedness?
You mean those instances back in April and May?
Exactly, April 7th and May 21st. Our sources highlighted these 2 specific dates where losses in the U.S. bond market directly triggered sell-offs in Japan's bond market.
And then it bounced back.
It ricocheted. The Japanese market instability then fed back and hit the U.S. market again. It shows just how tightly linked and, frankly, how fragile the global bond system has become.
Like dominoes, but bouncing back and forth.
Sort of, yeah. It reveals this increasingly brittle, interconnected system. So as we look ahead to the second half of this year, a linked meltdown, a simultaneous stress event across long-term bonds in the U.S., Europe, and Japan. That's a real risk, a growing one, perhaps.
And if that happens?
If that happens, the president might find themselves backed into a corner again, forced to concede to the market once more.
The stakes just feel incredibly high. And it's all unfolding right now.
Absolutely. We'll obviously be tracking this very closely. It feels like a situation that could genuinely reshape things, not just trade, but maybe the whole global economic order.
It really could.
So maybe the final thought to leave with everyone is this. In this world that's so interconnected, where tariffs are suddenly being used as this, multi-purpose political weapon, how might these pressures reshape things fundamentally?
Beyond just the economics?
Exactly. Beyond trade flows, how might it change international relations, global stability itself? It really makes you wonder, how much control governments actually have when the financial markets can become the ultimate judge and jury.
A lot to chew on there. Definitely keep exploring these issues as they develop. It's going to be a fascinating and probably bumpy ride